You know, a lot of people say that I'm a little too negative in my reviews, and I see where they're coming from, but at the same time, I kind of can't help it. It's just harder to talk about a movie, to review a movie, I should say, that you like, as opposed to a movie you don't like. There's only so there's really only so many times I can say this is a good thing. I like this. This element works for me, you know? But for those of you out there who have said I need to be a little more positive, today you shall get your wish. For I am not only going to review one good movie, I'm going to do two good movies, and it's going to be a comparison review. And what movies am I comparing, you may ask? Well, I'm going to compare A Few Good Men and The Caine Mutiny. This should be interesting. Now, some of you astute movie viewers, or those in the audience, you may notice that I'm reviewing two movies that may not be so similar. I probably should have reviewed Caine Mutiny and Crimson Tide. And I understand that logic, you know. They're both movies that take place on Navy ships that feature a, mutiny. But I'll be honest, I like Crimson Tide, but not as much as I do A Few Good Men. And A Few Good Men and Caine Mutiny both feature a military trial. So, we're doing A Few Good Men. Zoom out just a little. That'll work. Now we get everything. So, with all that being said, let's talk about our main characters. In A Few Good Men, we got Tom Cruise, who is a respectable lawyer, but he acts like a jackass because he's afraid of his own intelligence and still living in his father's shadow. Throughout the movie, he has to realize to not be so afraid of himself if he wants to succeed at what he's doing. How many was that? 6? For the Caine Mutiny, we have Fred McMurray, Van Johnson, and Robert Francis, who are all the three main officers on the minesweeper boat, the Caine, that we follow throughout the movie, who all have similar story. Who all have similar characteristics, all take a spotlight at some point, and are more focused on the business of the plot rather than their personal journey as characters. Yeah, I think A Few Good Men takes this round too. Don't get it twisted. You know, it's not that the Caine Mutiny has bad characters. They're just not particularly interesting ones outside of their main roles as the young guy, the dependable one, and the flake. Daniel Kaffee, on the other hand, has a journey, something that audiences usually like to hang their hat on. Daniel Kaffee, on the other hand, has an actual character journey, which in a story is a good thing for the audience to hold on to, especially when you're the main character of a drama. It's sort of just natural, you know, we like to see characters evolve and change on their journey throughout the story. It just kind of makes it a little bit better. It just kind of makes it a little bit better for us. So, first round, Few Good Men. So now we got side characters, and I'm just going to cut this one short and say I'm going to give it to A Few Good Men. Basically, the difference between the two is that Caine Mutiny has a wide variety of side characters that play little guest spots, you know, played by a lot of character actors at the time. And A Few Good Men has characters that play a stake in the actual plot, although having less of them. So I'm just gonna cut it short and give it to A Few Good Men. How many? So now we're going to move on to villains of the story. And for A Few Good Men, we have Colonel Nathaniel Jessup, played by Jack Nicholson. And I'm not going to tell you that this is a bad actor playing a bad character. That would be stupid of me to say that. Yeah, stupid is the right word. I mean, you gotta remember, this guy became a cinema icon in terms of good villains while only having 3 scenes in the movie. That is pretty darn impressive. And of course, if you can't handle that truth, then just go away. You know, we don't want you here. But you got to remember, this is a Jack Nicholson role playing a Jack Nicholson character. And again, I got nothing against Jack Nicholson, but he kind of just plays the same role in every movie he's in. Again, it's not a bad thing. It's just something to consider when going against the classic actor of Humphrey Bogart, who, while still typecasted, did have some variety in his characters and some different dimensions to them. Speaking of which, Captain Queeg. Uh-oh. Now, Captain Queeg is much more subtle than Jessup, and is not an explicit evil villain. He's more just a guy who is doing a job and his own paranoia gets the better of him. Now, y'all gonna think I'm a complete whack job, but I like Captain Queeg better than Jessup. You know, usually in these types of military movies that have, did I do 4 sets? I think I did 4. Okay, sweet. One more. You know, usually in these types of military movies, the commander is always like an overbearing, you know, super bad guy. You know, you're a useless piece of garbage, soldier. You're a piece of shit. You go and run till you die, kind of thing. And to me, Captain Queeg is different. He's not a bad guy. He is a highly decorated Navy captain, and he's just sent to do a job because the Caine is, you know, where the bad kids go. You know, this is the not cool kids, the slow kids in class, and they're a complete mess. They're known for being a mess, and Queeg is sent there to whip them in shape. But Queeg makes a few mistakes throughout the story, and then he blames that on his crew. And people are like, okay, sorry, dude, you know? And And whenever he does that, and whenever he gets nervous, he plays with these little marbles he keeps in his pocket as like a nervous tick. And you can tell right from the get go that, okay, something's a little off about this guy. And when the actual mutiny happens, it's more out of desperation from the commander crew to save everyone's life on the ship because Queeg is completely frozen in the big storm that happens. Spoiler alert. So his villainy comes from the fact that he's this paranoid mind that's blaming others for his own faults. I find that to be very interesting. Every time I watch this guy, I always like watching the little cues, like, okay, seeing where the insanity begins and ends, or was he always a little crazy? And his diatribe at the end, pretty good. So, as far as villains go, as classic as Nathaniel Jessup is, I give this round to Humphrey Bogart as Captain Queeg.
What about May?
As far as cinematography, editing, the nerd shit, as I call it, it's kind of unfair to compare an older movie to a newer movie, considering there's about 40 years of refinement of technique and technology advancement between the two. But I will say that Caine Mutiny, it does hold up pretty well. So I call this round a wash. Now, the story between the two movies is very similar, yet very different. Basically, it boils down to A Few Good Men, focusing much more on the trial and the investigation of the crime, and then a lengthy trial, whereas the Caine Mutiny focuses more on the buildup of the mutiny and then a relatively short trial. Now, when I first saw the Caine Mutiny, I wasn't really loving it. The story kind of didn't make a lot of sense. There was a lot of nonsense going on, and the things weren't really gelling or connecting together, and I wasn't really seeing how the dots fit together. Whereas A Few Good Men, you're invested right from the start, and everything flows very naturally into one another. And the Caine Mutiny, being an old Hollywood movie made in the 1950s, of course suffers from the forced 1950s Hollywood romance subplot. When I say subplot, I mean it comes at the beginning, the middle, and the end. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It really doesn't add anything to the movie. Whereas the sort of romance in A Few Good Men between Tom Cruise and Demi Moore is much more natural. They actually feel like more of a couple type deal, you know what I mean? But A Few Good Men has its own problems in that it relies a lot on melodrama with sort of music and slow angles and characters like speechifying everything, and it gets a little heavy-handed. Whereas the Caine Mutiny relies more on subtlety and the audience paying attention to small details. And the acting is much more tactical in that way. You basically can However, without giving it away, the Caine Mutinies, at the end, the story ties together in a way that it using the phrase like wrapped in a neat little bow. Usually, that you can't do that in a movie. You have to build up to your climax naturally, but the Caine Mutiny pulls it off. That made me kind of questioning, like, okay, I don't really get this movie, to I really fucking love this movie. It's really, it's kind of impressive in a way. Basically, you can compare the two movies with the ending monologues from our main villains. The "You Can't Handle the Truth" from Colonel Jessup is, of course, iconic, but it's very overt and basically just explains the theme to the audience. Not that it's not good, but it's loud and overly dramatic. Whereas Captain Queeg's cross-examination is much more subtle, and it has to be tactically laid out like a chess game. And you see all the pieces fit in, and you almost might miss it if you're not paying attention. At that point, it sort of depends on what you personally like. So, as far as what I like, to me, it's kind of a toss-up because I really like both stories. And they're both done really well in their own way. I do give a slight edge to the Caine Mutiny, though. It's just a lot smarter, and the way the story was handled, it's tied together so neatly and so eloquently. Going back and rewatching it actually makes you kind of catch some of the little things. I don't know. Like I said, I sound like I'm kind of babbling and like I don't know what I'm talking about because I really like both stories. I don't really know which one to really choose, but it can honestly it kind of depends on what you're in the mood for. Are you a lot more in the mood for a loud, bombastic melodrama or a slow-moving tactical drama? Depends. So with all that being said, which movie do I think is better in the end? That is the wrong end of the salt. I am going to say The Caine Mutiny. Again, I really, really like both movies a whole awful lot. I wouldn't do this video if I didn't like both movies. However, for me, there's just something about the story in The Caine Mutiny that draws me to her, that draws me more to it, as opposed to A Few Good Men. A Few Good Men, I feel like, is one of those movies that's... I don't really know how to describe this, but it feels like one of those movies that you know is going to be good when you see it, and you're like, oh, you know, that's really cool. You know, when I saw The Caine Mutiny, like I said earlier, I wasn't liking it at first, but then it really tied together in the end. So it feels more like my movie, you know? Like, think about your favorite movies. They're not like Citizen Kane or, I don't know, Casablanca or, you know, Schindler's List or Godfather, even though Godfather's actually a bad movie. You know, and all the, you know, they're not like the ones that everyone says are good, right? They're favorites in what you like and your taste, you know? So for me, my movie is Caine Mutiny. You may disagree, but I don't know. It's my show, so I can decide whatever I want to win. Thanks for watching. If you liked that video, good for you. And also, good news for you, because there's more where that came from if you subscribe. If you go down there, I almost said the word I shouldn't say. I'm not going to say it. If you go down there and there's some buttons for you to click, that'll make you see more videos. I know you want that because I know you like this, didn't you? At least I hope you do. But anyway, click those buttons if you like. Green beans are pretty healthy, right? They have fiber, whatnot. I assume. Now I'm asking the camera and the hypothetical audience. But what did you guys think? Do you think I'm wrong and I have no idea what I'm talking about? Do you like A Few Good Men better than Caine Mutiny? Have you actually seen the Caine Mutiny? Well, leave a comment there. Tell me how wrong I am. Anyway, that's about all I got. So, if you will excuse me, dinner is almost served. Later. No peace shall go uneaten.